All right, joining me once again here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is my good buddy Gaius Publius. Gaius is a writer and contributing editor for America Blog, which you can find at americablog.com. You can also follow him on Twitter at Gaius_Publius. Gaius, thank you so much for being on the show again.
Always a pleasure, Matt.
All right, so Gaius, starting in, I think it was May, you actually began a extensive, in-depth, three-part series on the climate for America Blog called The Climate Crisis, The View from 10,000 Feet, and it's really just an amazing, in-depth work. I guess I'm just going to let you start off by asking, why don't you give us you recently published the third part of this, but why don't you give us a brief overview of the first two parts that happened, and then we'll get to the third one.
Well, thank you, Matt. It's very easy to be lost in the climate story and kind of all of the details of, parts per million and warming projections and so forth. So I wanted to give people an overview of what we're really looking at. We're looking at, first of all, the history of life on the planet. We're looking at three geological eras: the era of life before the dinosaurs, the era of life during the age of reptiles and dinosaurs, and now the age of mammals and man. And
hold on, I thought the Earth was only 10,000 years old. That's what the Bible says. Are you telling me there's something different, Gaius?
Well, I'm saying that these geological eras are very short. Some of them are only 15 minutes long.
Sorry to interrupt you. Go on.
No problem. That's an appropriate interruption, I have to say. So these three eras, the first one is 250 million years long, roughly. It goes from minus 540 million years to minus 250 million years. Huge animals, pre-dinosaurs. It was a very abundant period of life on Earth, and it ended in an extinction called the Great Dying, in which 90% of all of the species in the sea went extinct, and about 70% of all of the species on land went extinct. That really cleared space for the dinosaurs. They were able to grow and flourish thanks to all of the space that was allowed, space to grow big, because now they don't have all their predators. So the next era is the era of the dinosaurs. That flourishes until that infamous event that I think everybody remembers from watching it on Nova 65 million years ago, another mass extinction. And as a result, space is cleared for us. Our era goes along with varying climates from about plus 3 degrees centigrade to about maybe minus 2 or 3 degrees centigrade, until we get into an age of glaciers, in which the climate starts to go south and then stabilizes at the north end. North meaning at the plus range. So we're about plus 2 to minus 2 or 3, plus 2 to minus 2 or 3. And man evolves in this era, and we're hunter-gatherers in the era of glaciers. At the end of the age of glaciers, the climate settles down about 12,000 years ago and comes to what we call generally zero, which is the average climate for the age of civilized man. That's also called the Holocene. But it's basically man settles down, becomes a farmer, makes villages, and ultimately makes nations and nation states. And at that point, in that entire era, once we get into it, the climate never goes above or below plus 1/2 degree centigrade, off of the norm for that era. There are regional variations, but the whole global climate, it's very stable for us.
That occurred about that started about 12,000 years ago, and that stability that's occurred for literally like the last 12,000 years is literally what allowed civilization as we know it to actually spawn and occur.
Exactly right. Humans, hominids come a couple of million years ago. Human beings, our species, comes about 200 to 250 million years ago. We were hunter-gatherers. All of the hominids and us were hunter-gatherers through that whole period, the period of the glaciers, intermittent ice ages. Only when the climate settles down in the last 10,000 years do we start to farm, make villages, and make what we call civilization.
Mm-hmm. So that's generally the brief overview of kind of the first two parts of this. which leads us to the recent one that you just wrote. So tell us, which is where are we heading, and when is this actually going to happen?
Well, I think we're back to William Butler Yeats' fearful symmetry. If you go all the way back to 540 million years ago in that era, you will see climate spikes up to 7 degrees centigrade above that 0 point in the Holocene, which is what we'll always call the 0 point unless otherwise noted. So you get spikes up to +7, spikes up to +6, spikes down to -4. You got huge variations in the climate. And then the stability, well, it turns out that by 2100, we could easily get a spike up to +7 again. It's just stunning. And think of the compression. 2 generations will see it.
And that's kind of, it spans initially from a lot of scientists like James Hansen was talking about how +3 will be about somewhere between, if that happens if we get a +3 spike, that's going to trigger between a 20 to 50% extinction scenario where between 2 and 5 species, 20% to 50% of the species on the planet is going to no longer be on this planet.
That's exactly right.
And that's at 3.
That's at 3, +3. But if we get to +3, we're going all the way, because if humans are the answer, and the latest IPCC report says even more certainly that humans are the problem, and therefore we have to be the answer. If we don't get this under control and the world goes to +3 and we start to see these extinctions and these mass migrations, no government in the world will be able to control its population to the extent that it can enforce a non-carbon economy.